Here are 6 pregame exercises that you can use to reduce sports performance anxiety going into a game. Exercise number 1 is to remember past successes. Now, whenever you're feeling very anxious, the reason that this anxiety is there is because your thoughts are on what you want to have happen or what you don't want to have happen, and you tend to worry about that. Now, that worry a lot of times is going to stem from self-doubt and low confidence. Because if you really knew that you were going to go out there and play your absolute best that game, do you think you would be worrying a lot about what's going to happen? Probably not. You'd probably just be more focused on actually going out there and playing because you believe that you could play well. When there is doubt present, this anxiety is going to be increased. The reason that remembering past successes can help with reducing anxiety going into a game is because, number one, it starts to take your attention off of what might happen and remind you of what you've done in the past, which is going to increase your confidence. And that carries us into the second reason why it helps. You're going to be in a more confident state. So if we think about what you're focused on before the game, when you're worried about what's going to happen, for the most part, that worry is going to be really centered around what you don't want to have happen. And so if you're thinking about what you don't want to have happen, you see how that's creating pictures in your mind and images in your mind of you making mistakes? Because you're thinking, I don't want to make mistakes, I don't want to lose, I don't want to play badly. All of those thoughts create those negative images. But if before the game you're remembering past successes, now all of a sudden you're filling your mind with images and scenes of you playing well because that's happened in the past. So that's one exercise that you can do before a game, is remember some past successes. And then another exercise is to create a very specific self-talk routine. Now, self-talk refers to the way that you're thinking and the way that you're talking to yourself. And we can break self-talk down into direct and indirect self-talk. Both of these are going to have an impact on your anxiety. Now, if you're thinking about what's going to happen in the future, which I said a second ago is really what's driving this anxiety, well, we see that your self-talk is centered around what you don't want to have happen, and it's really centered around this anxiety, right? That's what you're thinking, so that's what your self-talk is focused on. The reason that it helps to create a specific self-talk routine is because in these moments, your natural thoughts will probably be about what you don't want to have happen since you're experiencing this anxiety. What you want to do is you want to try to substitute those thoughts for more positive and productive thoughts, which can be difficult to think of in the moment. So you want to actually kind of preemptively create a self-talk routine that you will then repeat to yourself in these moments going into the game. And whenever you're creating this self-talk routine, you want to have 2 goals in mind: increase my confidence and also work to calm myself down. Number 1, when you're thinking about how much you don't want to make mistakes or you're anxious about what's going to happen, you know that confidence isn't going to be as high as you want it to be, so you want to increase your confidence. The more confidence you have, the less anxious you're going to be. But then also, we know anxiety causes tension. And one of the main reasons why anxiety is going to lower your performance during games is because you're going to play tense and you might even play a little timidly. The calmer that you can get yourself, the more relaxed you can get yourself, the less anxious you're going to feel. So what I recommend is thinking about, what are maybe 5 to 10 statements that you could repeat to yourself that would generate some confidence, and then also work to calm yourself down in these moments. Then what you can do is you can start rereading that list to yourself every single day. This is going to help you memorize it so it's easier to repeat before the game. And then before the game, depending on kind of at what kind of time you are at before the game, you can either reread this statement again on your phone to yourself. Let's say, you're in your house, maybe you're on the bus, you're not actually at the field or at the court yet. Maybe even if you're in the locker room, you can do this. But then right before the game starts, you're not going to be able to look at your phone. So this is where you need to really just be actively thinking these positive and productive self-talk statements. And then exercise number 3 is that you want to set a clear definition of success. What I mean by this is you really need to have an idea of what you're working towards that game. Now, we know anxiety, like I said earlier, is going to be based on what you don't want to have happen or what you do want to have happen, but it's based on that worries about the future. The reason that setting a clear definition of success helps so much is really in the way that we're going to set this definition. This definition of success is going to be based on controllable parts of your game. One of the main reasons that anxiety is so frustrating is because we're typically going to be anxious about things that are out of our control. Because if something is in our control, there's not necessarily a reason to be anxious about it going into a game because you can make sure that it happens. Right? But through talking with athletes, one of the most common reasons that they'll tell me they're anxious is because they're worried about, striking out. They're worried about missing the shot. They're worried about, losing the tackle. whenever they're worried about those things, we know that yes, they can influence them, right? So the example with the at bat, you can influence whether or not you strike out by swinging good pitches, having good timing, having a good mindset at the plate. But there's also the aspect of the pitcher is throwing to you and the umpire is calling the strikes. There are a lot of factors that are out of your control. So whether or not you strike out is not fully controllable. But when we focus on things that are not fully controllable, we see anxiety increase. So what you really want to do is you want to set a definition of success, which means what is it going to mean for me to have a good game today? What do I want to focus on? What do I want to do well? That is 100% within your control. Now, these are referred to as performance objectives. You want to set these performance objectives based on controllable parts of your game that are part of the process. When you do this, something really cool happens. Your attention is taken off the future, off what might happen, off those uncontrollables, and it's put more on the process of your game, on the controllable aspects of your game. But now, the controllable aspects of your game, those are what actually lead to you playing well in the first place. So not only are you working to reduce your anxiety, but you're honestly giving your attention to the things that are going to help you play well in the first place, which is really what you're after. And then exercise number 4 is you want to focus on your breathing. This one's really going to help with the physical symptoms of the anxiety that you feel going into a game. When you focus on your breathing, you want to make sure that you're taking nice deep breaths. This is why I always recommend, count breathing to the athletes that I work with in one-on-one coaching, which, by the way, if you are interested in learning more about one-on-one mental performance coaching, I put a link to that in the description below. But count breathing, what this is, it's where you breathe in for a certain count. So I usually say breathe in for a count of 5, and then you breathe out for a count of 10. Now, when you're breathing out, you want to breathe out nice and slow and controlled. So, by the time you get to 10, that's when you're really just releasing the last bit of air. Once again, kind of similar to a lot of the exercises that I've talked about up to this point, this breathing is going to accomplish 2 different things. Number 1, it is going to reduce the physical symptoms that you feel. When you're feeling anxious, you kind of have that rapid heartbeat. And also, if you pay attention to your breathing when you're anxious, you'll notice that your breathing is more shallow. By taking these nice deep breaths, that's going to work to reduce those physical symptoms. But what's also happening is when you focus on the counting, right? You focus on those numbers and you really bring that attention onto your breath. You're focusing on the present moment. And as I've said many times already, that anxiety is driven by worries about the future. The more present you can be, the more you can have your awareness in the present moment, the less anxious you're going to feel. And then exercise number 5 is to practice gratitude. Practicing gratitude is really interesting with anxiety because, anxiety, we're worried about what's going to happen. But when we're grateful, we're happy about what we have. We're happy about the opportunity to play. And this starts to really shift your mindset going into a game. So on one hand, when you're anxious, we can say that you're worried about what's going to happen and you really need to play well. You're worried about the embarrassment and all that. But when you're grateful, you're simply just focusing on the fact that you're grateful to be able to play. You're grateful to be able to spend this time with your teammates. You're grateful for the opportunity to compete. You aren't as worried about what's going to happen. You're focused more on what you're getting to do. Right? So you're enjoying the process more. You're enjoying just the fact that you get to play instead of putting so much stress on how you will play. And then exercise number 6 is to focus on having fun. It really goes off that last one of focusing on gratitude. Because once again, we want to bring your attention more into the present moment. And if you can focus more on enjoying yourself and having fun, well, then we know that you're not going to be as anxious because you're getting that satisfaction from simply playing instead of looking for that satisfaction in how am I going to play and, am I going to play well this game? So those are 6 pregame exercises that you can use to reduce anxiety going into games. Now, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about why this anxiety is there in the first place, I've put a link right here to another video that goes into detail on what sports performance anxiety is and the number 1 cause of anxiety in sports. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training.